And now for the seat. This thing's moving right along here. Okay, let's do these brackets first. So what you do is you bolt this one on, just leave it a little bit loose, and then what we're going to do, we're going to trial fit the computer under the seat here, and then we'll fit that in there, and then we'll do the other side. On this side of the bike, we have the diagnostic plug, and then we have the computer. Now what we want to do, we may have to go ahead and take this sheathing off, at least part of it, because I couldn't bend this thing around and get it situated under the bracket. It was just too stiff. So let me show you how to do that. You can also pop this off the computer if you want, or the connector. Just push that button right there, and then that should come out. If you do want to take that off to work on this. Now what we're going to do, we're going to trial fit the computer module under this bracket. Just put a couple of screws in there and the nuts on there just temporarily. They don't need to be tied. Just put that on there, and that's how it goes. So the module's here with the connector on this side. What we're going to do, we're going to see if we can kind of bend that around there to fit it in there. Let me try to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, I got mine to fit really well in there, and I got enough flex in the wires there so that'll fit in there, because there will be a matching bracket on this side. Now what I had to do is I had to very carefully remove that big heavy sheathing that went over these wires. So if you do have to do that, be really careful when you cut that sheathing and the wire ties on that you don't damage or cut one of these little wires, because that would be tragic. You'd have to try to splice it together. It would be awful. So be really careful, make sure there's good light, and if you have to remove that. And then what I did is I went ahead and just taped mine about down to here. That way it still had enough flex to where it would move around and it would fit under there. So do that, and then we'll show you how to mount all this stuff up. Okay, I've screwed the module to the bracket. Oh, I forgot to mention too, make sure this big flange is on the back side. And one thing to note too, your bracket will actually look different than this. I had to put more slope on it. So yours will have a little more slope front to back, and then it'll have this section removed here so it'll fit under that pan better. But it'll still have this flange hanging down here, so it should go the same. Okay, I found the best sequence to add this and the license plate bracket would be to go ahead and put the nuts in these just loose first, and that'll hold that bracket on there. And then you can go ahead and put the tail, all these 3 bolts here in. Start with the bottom one, because that way it doesn't swing out of the way so bad. So anyway, you can work it around and get them in there. So go ahead and put the 3 bolts here, one here, one here, and one here. It goes with a foot peg mounted. And then, like I say, leave all this stuff loose for right now, and we're going to fit the pan on to make sure everything lines up. Okay, we're going to trial fit the pan on here right now. So the first thing you want to do is make sure this module or the plug is fit under the bracket like that, so it's out of the way. You don't want it to get pinched here by the seat pan. And then make sure your connector is out of the way too. And then take these 2 bolts out, set those aside. And then what we'll do is we'll take the pan and we'll put it on there like this. Slide it forward. It should kind of, and then you have to kind of slide it back just a little bit until it fits. Make sure it kind of pops in there, everything kind of fits really nice. And then let's go ahead and put these screws in here real quick, just finger tight. And then you may want to snug these up just a little bit, these 2 screws here and the 2 over here, just so that everything kind of fits nice. Everything's looking good. I'm going to show you how to adjust this screw right here. Now, I'm not sure we need this, but the reason we designed it this way is I don't want this pan sitting on these soft wire covers right here. We need to put we want the tension to be on this screw so it doesn't put constant pressure on those wires. So what I want you to do is just turn that in with a jam nut up. Just turn that in so you just barely feel that. You can feel it just barely come off that cable. And then once you feel that, then just go ahead and tighten that jam nut. That'll hold that in place. And that way you don't have the pressure on those cables. We'll take the pan off and then we'll fit everything to it and we'll put it back on. First, we want to attach this bracket here. Use the nylock nuts that are supplied with the screws in the bracket. and then tighten those up, and then we'll move on to the next step. You'll notice we include this Allen wrench under the seat. You probably found that already. It'll fit most of the Allen screws. Next, we're going to fasten the springs. You go grab those. They're in the kit there. And then use these screws with the big thick washer and the Allen wrench that we gave you. And it's kind of a secret to do this. So what you do is you just stick the Allen wrench through that opening, that little squiggly there. Run the Allen wrench up like that. Set the screw on the Allen wrench. Run that down in the spring a little bit, like that. And then I just slide the washer sideways through the spring opening there. And there you go. And the washer's down inside and the spring is ready to mount. Okay, before we actually mount the seat, let's go ahead and install this one more time and fit it on there. And it'll give us a chance to tighten all these screws and everything up, get everything ready to go for the seat. So slide the pan in place. What I do is I just slide it up like that, push it forward. Sometimes you have to kind of move it back, wiggle it a little bit for it to seat down in there really good. There you go. Okay, make sure that's seated in there really nice. And we'll go ahead and just put these in there just finger tight on both sides. And then we'll go ahead and adjust, tighten all the screws. Okay, let's go ahead and tighten these 3 screws on this side, on the license plate bracket, or on this bracket here, and then do the other 2 on this side. And then before we remove the pan, this is probably still loose a little bit. What I do is, it's kind of hard to get a wrench in there, so what I do is I kind of find out, just kind of see where those screws should be in relationship to these cutouts. And kind of remember where they're at, so when you take the pan off, you can tighten that up. So I'm looking at it, we're in relationship to the slots. So I'll take the pan off and then I'll tighten those up. Okay, I'll slide that over to about where it was supposed to be, and then we'll go ahead and snug those up. Oh, one last thing too. As you put the pan on, maybe these screws may hit something here. You may have to reroute your cables or whatever. So that's why I have you trial fit this before we actually put the seat on, because it's going to be a little bit heavier and more awkward when we get the seat on. Oh, and then if these are a little loose, don't worry, we're going to line these up when we put the seat on. Next, let's go ahead and tighten these springs up. Now what I did is, see this funny little whoop-de-doo here? Put it on both the same side. That way the springs will kind of sit a little more straight. If you swivel around the other way, they kind of look funny and kind of crooked. So I do the little whoop-de-doo on each side on the same side. And you can find a place there to run the Allen wrench through sideways to snug those up. Make sure they're in line. Okay, let's go ahead and mount the seat to the pan. Now the way that works is we want to leave this bracket tight and then loosen these just to where this bracket will move just a little bit. And then the way this mounts is these 2 forks in the front, these 2, they go over the outsides of these. And then these 2 in the back, they'll go over the outside edges of the springs. I mean, if there's a little variation in the springs on yours, you may want to adjust that. You could go in the front or the back, as long as the springs fit nice and straight. Okay, what we'll do is we'll mount that front fork first. Go ahead and run that screw through there. And then we'll set these on the back here. We'll set those over the springs and then run the screw through on both sides. You'll have to use the big washer on the spring side. So the big washer will go on the inside with the spring. Just run the nylock nuts on just a little bit, just to hold the thing in place. Okay, now what you want to do is make sure the seat is, the springs are straight up and down. You don't want the springs on an angle back or forward, so make sure the springs are nice and straight. And then what I do is I just reach through the front here, and I'll snug that front bolt up a little bit. That way it'll hold it in place, and then we'll take this off, tighten everything up, and then I'll show you how to put it back on. Okay, I had the seat off and I tightened this 2 screws in the fork up front. You can snug those up pretty good because you don't want that to slide back or it'll make the springs tilt. Okay, once you put the seat back on, now you can tighten these up nice and tight. No worries there. So go ahead and snug those up on both sides. And then the front bolt, just don't tighten that too much because you want it to be able to swivel. It's basically a swivel bolt. So as the seat goes up and down, that has to swivel on that front screw. So just run that screw in until it just, you know, you want the nylock to engage and you don't want it to be sloppy, but don't have it tight to where it can't swivel. And there it is. Gosh, the springs are straight up and down. These two screws, this one and the one on the other side, make sure you use the big thick washers, and that's what holds your seat down. So make sure as you put it down, it seats good before you tighten those up. And one last thing too, whenever you're taking the seat on and off, make sure you don't get the wires from either the computer or the plug, the diagnostic plug on this side, or your wires on the other side that we're going to do later. Make sure you don't have wires in the way. It'll get pinched by the seat pan here. And then one other thing I noticed is this little black section right here on the front of the seat. I'm going to paint that. It's had some wear from the factory seat. I'm going to just brush a little paint on there and it'll look a little nicer. So there you have it. We'll be taking this off soon to do the wiring, so you don't need to snug these up too much.